Good evening. It's Saturday, the 13th of December. You're tuned in to our late night newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story tonight, President Park Geun-hye has been hailing the success of the Korea-ASEAN Commemorative Summit that wrapped up Friday in Korea's southern city of Busan, saying it laid the groundwork for even stronger ties as the Southeast Asian nations prepare to launch the ASEAN Economic Community at the end of next year. President Park made the remarks on Saturday during bilateral talks with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen at the presidential office of Cheongwa-dae. The ASEAN Economic Community is aimed at creating a single market with a free flow of goods, services, investments, capital and skilled labour within ASEAN. During the Korea-ASEAN Summit, Korea and the Southeast Asian nations pledged to boost two-way trade volume to $200 billion by the year 2020. Now, the United States will launch a full-blown probe into the status of North Korea's system of political prison camps. Sources in the US say a bill calling for an investigation passed through the House of Representatives and the Senate early this week. The report will be required to include the size of the camps, reasons behind the inmates' detainment, as well as satellite imagery of the prisons. The legislation also calls for the identification of individuals and agencies responsible for conditions in each camp at all levels of the North's government. Now, it's believed to be the first time the United States has passed a law calling for a probe into the North's political prison camps. This latest development adds to growing international pressure on North Korea to improve its abysmal human rights record. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on China and Japan to set hate aside in a speech at China's First State Memorial Ceremony for the victims of the Nanjing massacre. The Chinese leader said they should look forward, but he warned Japan against trying to downplay the seriousness of the crimes it committed. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Chinese President Xi Jinping says Beijing and Tokyo should set aside their hatred and work to prevent Japan's historical wrongdoings, negatively affecting relations between the two countries now. China has been marking the first National Memorial Day for the Nanjing massacre. It was during this massacre in December 1937 that China says more than 300,000 Chinese civilians and soldiers were killed by the Japanese military. A post-war Allied tribunal put the death toll at 142,000. But some conservative Japanese politicians and scholars deny a massacre took place at all. Speaking at a ceremony in Nanjing on Saturday, President Xi called on Japan to apologize and atone for his past atrocities, and said history is very clear about what happened in the city 77 years ago.
History will not change due to the changing times. Facts will not disappear because of clever tongue repudiation. The Nanjing massacre was proven with ironclad evidence, cannot be tampered with. Any attempt to deny the fact of Nanjing massacre is unacceptable to the history, to the 300,000 souls of the innocent people slaughtered in the massacre.
Despite a recent icebreaker meeting between President Xi and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, relations between China and Japan have deteriorated sharply over the past year, following Abe's visit to a highly controversial war shrine that honors a number of Class A war criminals, as well as Japan's war dead. China and Japan are also locked in a territorial dispute over some islands in the East China Sea. Meanwhile, an editorial in the LA Times this week points out that conservatives in Japan are still trying to deny the Japanese military used tens of thousands of Korean women as sex slaves before and during the Second World War. The Daily was highly critical of the right-wing group's attempts to whitewash history and persuade the world the crimes never happened. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's free trade agreement with Canada will take effect from January 1st. Korea's Trade Ministry says the start date was confirmed after the Canadian government approved the ratification of the deal earlier this week. This trade deal is going to lead to the reduction in price of a number of popular import goods from Canada, including winter parkas made by the company Canada Goose, The 13% tariff on these highly sought-after jackets will be completely lifted on New Year's Day. Good news, too, for seafood lovers, as the 20% tariff on frozen lobster from Canada will also be completely eliminated. As for goods going the other way, a 6% tariff on Korean vehicles will be phased out over the next 3 years. Tariffs on Korean TVs will also be scrapped from the January 1st start date. Now, the price of oil has plunged even further after a leading energy agency said it expected even weaker demand for oil next year. On Friday, the benchmark US oil price dropped over $2 to close at just below $58 a barrel. It's now a staggering 46% below its late June high for the year of some $107. In its report, the International Energy Agency reduced its 2015 forecast for growth in global oil demand by 230,000 barrels a day to 900,000 barrels per day. It added that it didn't expect low oil prices to start constricting the supply boom we've been seeing in the United States. The agency's report is just the latest in a string of forecasts that warn there's far more oil being produced than there is demand for it. With times changing so quickly due to rapid technological advances, industry cannot afford to stand still for fear of falling behind the competition. Now, identifying the need to keep pushing the boundaries, Korean companies have been very active in seeking out some new growth engines. For a snapshot of what they've been up to, Connie Lee reports.
The Korea Electric Power Corporation branch in Guri is equipped with a so-called energy storage system. This system raises energy effectiveness by reserving solar power and cheaper electricity at night so they can be used during peak hours. The power usage within the building is controlled in real time by a smart grid station.
The system helps reduce the use of energy inside the entire building by 10%.
In the shipbuilding industry, a vessel operation system called Smart Ship creates safer journeys for ships by exchanging information with the control center on land. The features include a new generation digital radar that is forecast to bring about an economic effect of $230 million. In the medical industry, a domestically produced generic drug for rheumatoid arthritis was licensed by the European Medicines Agency and could substantially reduce the financial burden for patients.
It would help patients reduce treatment costs by $4,000 a year.
From nuclear power plants being exported to the UAE and a secondary battery for electric cars to solar energy, these are all emerging as innovative industries that could give Korea an edge in the global market. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Now, with the Korea-China free trade agreement set to take effect next year, local farmers here in Korea are banding together to try and mitigate the possible negative effects of what is going to be a huge deal. From new cultivation methods to fresh export strategies, our Son Jung-in has more.
Oakwood mushrooms cultivated in this greenhouse grow from sawdust trunks instead of oak tree hardwood. This cheaper and easier method was introduced years ago with eyes on competing with low-price oak mushrooms from China. But now the original way is making a comeback as a high-income source.
Oakwood mushrooms that grow on hardwood have a stronger smell and taste that is relished by Asians. We produce quality mushrooms targeting high-class Chinese consumers to differentiate ourselves.
Up until now, local mushroom farms focus their business on the domestic market. But in light of the Korea-China Free Trade Pact expected to go into effect next year, they're now searching for new targets in China as a possible niche market. Manufacturers across the country gathered recently to discuss ways to increase the competitiveness of Korea's forest product export industry.
This year, we invited forest product farmers to join hands with local trading companies to export together.
They plan to improve the quality of not only their mushrooms, but other forest products such as chestnuts and persimmons.
We need to take the FTA crisis as an opportunity to establish a strong foothold in the Chinese market.
As implementation of the Korea-China FTA grows near, farmers and officials in the forest and agriculture industry are exercising wisdom and employing a strategy that is in the best interest of the country and its future. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
The first team of medical personnel that Korea promised to send to Ebola-hit West Africa has left for Britain, where they'll receive training before heading to Sierra Leone. The team of 4 doctors and 6 nurses departed from Incheon International Airport on Saturday afternoon. They'll take a week-long safety education course near London before flying to Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown, to start their work. Japan heads to the polls on Sunday for the snap general election Prime Minister Shinzo Abe called late last month. According to the most recent opinion polls, Abe's Liberal Democratic Party and its coalition partner Komeito will retain their unassailable 2/3 majority and crush a weak opposition. Abe is looking for a strong victory as he wants a mandate to push through his economic and security-related plans without any fuss. A poll conducted by the Asahi Shimbun earlier this week showed the coalition Abe leads will likely secure around 320 of the 475 seats in the lower house, giving them the supermajority they need to force through legislation. Now, observers expect turnout to be low, with many voters underwhelmed about a general election just 2 years into the usual 4-year term. And before we go, leaving you with a brief look at the weather here in Korea, and it's going to be another bitterly cold night across the country, with the overnight low plunging to -9 degrees Celsius here in Seoul. Sunday will be a crisp and clear day across most of the nation, but temperatures will stay below freezing in most parts of the country. Now, for our viewers overseas, let's take a look at the weather conditions in your part of the world. Well, those are the stories we have for you at this hour. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye.